Welcome back to another episode of Parks Made Possible. I'm Nick.
I'm Kate.
And we're here to make your national parks trip possible. If you missed our first couple episodes, what we do is aim to bring you great insights and recommendations on how to have a wonderful experience when you visit our national parks. So please like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell, do whatever you need to do so that you can stay in touch with us, and that way we'll always be there for you when we release new content on any of the new national parks, any of the new content that we have coming out. So,
on today's episode, we'll be focusing on a national park that is very special to us, Zion. This is a park that we've been to, one of our favorites, very excited for this. It's also one of the most popular national parks in the top list overall. Mm-hmm. And we're focusing more on these specific parks to bring more information and more planning tips for these very popular parks because we know a lot of people are planning trips there. So
yeah. Before we jump into Zion, a quick note about our small business, TripPossible. We sell guidebooks to a lot of the national parks. We put them on our website for sale. And now, in addition to Yosemite and Yellowstone, Zion has its own guidebook out there on our website for sale. We're really proud of this one. It's excellent. These are really beloved, I think, by the people that buy them and then use them when they visit national parks. So as we go through the episode today, we'll refer to that a lot and hop on the website if you want to check it out. They are ready for sale. So with that, you want to jump into Zion?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So first, let's get started. Why don't, Nick, can you explain and maybe set the stage for us? Where is Zion located?
Yep. So Zion is in southwestern Utah. The closest big city is probably Las Vegas. It's like 3 hours away from Vegas. It feels a world away. But it's in southwest Utah. It is relatively small. If we're comparing it to Yellowstone, which we did in the last episode, Yellowstone is, let me get it right here, 3,472 square miles. Zion is 15 times smaller than that. So it's only a 229 square mile park. So it packs a lot of action into a very small park, but it is, I would almost say, more remarkable. I think we both loved it so much when we were there. It's 2 hours away from Bryce Canyon National Park. So if you ever think about wanting to combine it with other Utah parks, people refer to the Utah Mighty Five. Zion and Bryce are two of those. And then Zion is also near to the north rim of the Grand Canyon, about 3 hours away. So you could combine all those in one kind of epic southwestern U.S. road trip.
That's what we did. We did Bryce first, or Zion first, then Bryce, and then Grand Canyon.
Yeah, mixed in a little Antelope Canyon on the way there.
Yeah, and Horseshoe Bend, some other little stops along the way. Mm-hmm. But very epic trip.
It was. Yeah, Zion was so special to us. It was made a national park in 1919. So unbeknownst to us, we were there almost on its 100th birthday. But yeah, all right, set the table for me. What did you love so much about Zion? What made it special for you?
So I am a views girl. One of the episodes that we had previously, it was I'm in it for the view, for sure. Mm-hmm. And Zion does not disappoint. There were views, epic rock formations, the layers of these rocks were so cool. Like I wouldn't consider myself like a geological nerd, but I felt like a geological nerd in Zion.
It's hard not to be because they're all around you all the time. Is like these towering sandstone cliffs and all the layers. You mentioned all the layers. They're all different colors. So it looks like this layered cake, where every layer of the cake is a different color, different depth.
Yes.
So neat.
So because of these different colors and the different layers, like the canyon views and like the rock cliff edges, they kind of change throughout the day as the sun changes position and the colors and shades, shadows are a little bit
totally
different.
Yeah.
So you could be at a restaurant in the morning and one canyon's lit up a certain way, and then you come back, have dinner later, it's like totally different and like glowing. And so
you find yourself just constantly wanting to take photos because it always looks different. And that's, I think, the beauty about a park like this is that no matter when you visit or what time of day, it's a good time to be there because it always looks spectacular in a different way.
Yes.
Yeah.
So epic scenery
Yeah.
is definitely one of the top things that we loved about Zion National Park. Also, some incredible hiking. We were only there for 2 nights, unfortunately, because we booked it in with, like I said earlier, a couple other parks. So we wanted to make sure we could see some other parks too. So it limited our hiking options, but we still saw some epic things. And I think we did the West Rim Trail to Scouts Lookout. We talked about in our top hikes episode.
Check that episode out.
Yes.
But that's the same hike where you can do Angel's Landing if you want. We did not. I have no regrets.
Yes. So Angel's Landing is definitely one of the top hikes that Zion is known for. And yeah, so incredible hiking. And then I think also too, one of the key features of Zion is the Virgin River. So it's the main river that kind of cuts through the canyons and the valleys. And depending on the season and the weather, it could be like a little creek, which it kind of was.
Yeah.
We were there in September.
I think it'd be really low.
So it was kind of lower. But there's other times where they'll get tons of rain and there'll be flash flooding, which is very dangerous actually. But I think too, like the snow melt as it turns to spring, that can also impact the water levels of that river and the canyon there. So it's also very beautiful, brings different plants and wildlife. And
it's like if you can imagine a desert. I mean, I would say Zion very much has desert scenery, as someone would who hasn't been to that area of the country can imagine. A lot of the oranges and the creams and the pink colors and ochre and yellow and brown, that feels like a desert to you. But then you get there and you see all the greens that really surprise you because of the Virgin River. Like it winds its way through Zion Canyon and brings all these plants to life. Animals come and drink from the river and all the big trees that grow down next to the river. It's neat what it can do. It can bring this little oasis vibe to an otherwise sort of arid desert park. But that's the thing that's neat about Zion. You might get into it later, but the biodiversity about it is really remarkable, I thought.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that at all.
Yeah, I think this was actually the first park that we went to on our trip, and the first time I actually saw a cactus in real life.
Oh yeah,
I remember our first little hike that we did. It was in Kolob Canyons, kind of like the northwest portion of the park. It's a little bit secluded, but we went up there literally on our drive in from Vegas. That was the first stop. We just were coming in. That was the first night thing that we did. And I remember kind of hiking up, and it was this little like just prickly cactus. It wasn't anything like big or spectacular, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a real cactus.
Always remember your first cactus.
Yeah.
No. That was a beautiful area of the park, though. We'll talk about that a little later, but I'm really glad we did that. I think when people think about visiting Zion, they immediately think Angel's Landing, which we mentioned, the Narrows, which is that hike that takes you wade through the Virgin River up through the slot canyon that it carved. They think those two places, maybe Watchman, that really neat mountain that sort of looms over the valley. But you forget about almost everything else, The Kolob Canyons was so pretty. When we drove in, the scenic drive that we took, the little hike that we took to the Timber Creek Overlook, what an awesome way to introduce us to the park because it was super empty, secluded, right at sunset. No one was there, and we kind of had that whole place to ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that's important to mention right from the jump because Zion was the second most visited park last year. Second. But behind which will always take the first place trophy, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So it is now like you hold it in the same conversation as Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, Yosemite. Zion is now like above all of those. So finding seclusion in that park is going to be really hard. And I think Kolob Canyons is a really great recommendation. I'm glad you mentioned that. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that I know we wanted to dig into a little bit more, and we kind of talked about it a little bit, are the layers of all the rocks. Talk to me a little bit about that process and
gosh.
that geological history aspect of all these layers.
I found that so fascinating when we got there. Again, unexpected. Like you see photos and you're like, oh, that's really, really pretty. Then you get there and realize the millions and millions of years of work that it took to create that scenery. Just doing a little bit of research because I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to geologic history and stuff. The learning about the way that that was created was so fascinating. So it just takes, I mean, I think the very first step in that process happened at 1.8 billion years ago, when a lot of mud was deposited essentially below like an ancient ocean, right? And then that ocean burns off and the mud hardens into rock. And then that happens time and time and time and time again. Every time it takes millions and millions of years for that process to happen again. And then sand dunes become compacted so under such heat and pressure that they become rock, right? And then it's just another layer gets added to that rock formation until at one point, those layers are kind of done forming. Pardon me. Then they get eroded by wind and by water, like the Virgin River, right? So imagine that landscape just kind of being layers of a cake, but then you like imagine pouring like hot liquid through that, and it just carves this route through it. A beautiful slot canyon gets created, and that's Zion Canyon. But then you know, with an uncut cake, so to speak, you don't get to see the layers until they're revealed to you. So I think visitors get very lucky when they stand in Zion Canyon and look around them and see all the layers of millions and millions of years of work that it took to create that landscape. It's so neat. It again, just kind of takes your breath away almost nonstop. The Grand Canyon was very similar in the way it was formed. A lot of the same principles were at work, but Zion is similar too. So I just, so special. It's hard to describe until you get there. But yeah, that really takes your breath away.
For sure. And I remember very vividly seeing just like stripes, like some of the layers were thicker than others, and like seeing that cutaway, it's very cool.
It's so neat. It's like Earth's history gets peeled back for you. And I think truly, I will zag into the Grand Canyon just because I know for a fact the bottom layer of rock at the Grand Canyon is 1.8 billion years old. The Earth is only like 4.4 billion years old. So you're going like a quarter of the way through our planet's history. You can go touch that at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. I think that's pretty neat. So, see. All right, nerding over, done.
It's science.
It's my favorite, but
I love it too.
All right, let's talk about some hikes in Zion. I think that's probably the number one thing that people can do when they go there. If you're able, it's super important, I think, to hit the trail. So what did we do when we were there?
Yeah, so I think an interesting thing to note, hiking in Zion, obviously there's traditional hiking, some like paths and trails and things that you can follow, but we mentioned the Narrows earlier. It's another hike that is known in Zion, and it's actually in a river. Like you're going to need to rent specific equipment or bring your own to wade through these water systems that takes you up into the canyon. So definitely, I know, Nick, you've planned a ton of trips to Zion and have helped people kind of find those resources. But that's kind of a little atypical hiking experience in Zion, which is really cool. And then I know there's also another hike called the Subway, which we did not do, but it, again, was kind of created from that water eroding some of the canyon layers. And it actually is like a tunnel in some spots, kind of. Like it's kind of carved away on the sides of the rocks that looks like a subway, underground kind of thing. Yeah, like a
subway tunnel.
So also very cool, different hiking experience. The ones that we did do, though, we can dig into those. I know the Kolob Canyons area, we did the Timber Creek Overlook is the one that you mentioned.
Very pretty.
I would say it was a very easy hike up to a lookout where you're literally looking at this beautiful display of rock.
Oh my gosh. Like
mountains,
360 degree view, but it's, oh man.
Yes, and then you're looking out over the valley. It kind of felt like Simba, like looking out.
I like that.
I actually have a picture of you. You're like
Oh my goodness.
like eagle wings out kind of thing. But it was so beautiful. And like you said earlier, it was pretty secluded at the time we went.
Yeah,
So
it's just rare to get that in Zion. So I think it's worth it to visit Kolob Canyons.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's another hike we didn't get to, but there's a few good trails in that area.
Middle
of the park.
fork of the Taylor Creek.
Yep. Yeah, a little bit longer. Yeah.
Cool.
Zion Canyon is definitely where the action is. That's the canyon that the Virgin River carved. And I think that's probably where, 95+% of the visitors congregate. Kind of similar to Yosemite Valley, in that park. And all the action really is there for the most part. So, yeah. So the trail we did, the West Rim Trail.
Yes. So, looking at a map, the West Rim Trail is actually really a long hike, and we did not start at the actual trailhead, which actually I think starts from Kolob Canyons. That area.
Kolob Terrace Road. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You're right.
So you could start at the trailhead there and take a longer route in, but I think we started down. What's it called? The Grotto?
The Grotto, yeah. It's a shuttle stop on the main Zion Canyon Scenic Drive. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, we started at the
Grotto.
Grotto.
Start from the bottom instead of starting from the top. That's what we did.
Gotcha.
Yep, to shorten.
So yeah, we did the West Rim Trail via the Grotto.
Oh my gosh.
Shuttle stop. Anyway, so we made it
trail.
up, and we talked about this hike again in our top hikes podcast. But there were definitely areas that were super cool. Walter's Wiggles, one of my favorites that we've talked about a lot. But it takes you up to kind of like a branching off point where Angel's Landing continues off. And then there's the West Rim Trail kind of continues around. But you can make it up to Scouts Lookout and get an awesome view of the canyon. You can kind of see where Angel's Landing kind of goes down. But it can be very crowded because there's usually backup.
Probably, besides the Narrows, is probably the most popular hike in Zion, I would say. Yeah, in specifically Angel's Landing. I think it's probably a good time to mention the Angel's Landing hike requires a permit now. It's really important to be aware of that. It's hard to miss it. They put a lot of signage on their website and in the park. But yes, the Angel's Landing is a very sought after hike. It's extremely beautiful. It can be precarious. You're hiking up a 1,000-foot rock spine, a ridge where there's steep cliffs on both sides of you. So anyway, they needed to control congestion on that hike because it was just too busy for such a tight, narrow hike. So you need to get a permit to do that. It's a lottery system. You need to put your name into a ring with other people and hope that you get lucky. From what I understand, there's about a 40% chance that you can win a permit to hike Angel's Landing. But you cannot get past, once you go up the West Rim Trail to Scout Lookout, you cannot go further up to Angel's Landing beyond that point. So we stopped and we were perfectly happy at Scout Lookout. It's a beautiful view. I mean, truly. And then the rest of that hike itself is stunning. Like the switchbacks at Walter's Wiggles are great. It's so unique. Yeah. So I felt like we didn't need Angel's Landing, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think there were little areas where we were having our lunch at the top at Scouts Lookout.
Yeah.
Where the layers of rocks were like so cool. We were literally sitting on these rocks, and I take lots of pictures. So if you know me, that's probably yeah. Anyway, so I have a picture of you. You're literally counting the layers of these rocks that we were like sitting. But that one was specifically was like just all gray. It wasn't that red. So it was kind of just cool to see the variety again.
But like it is thin as a couple pieces of paper stacked on top. Those are how thin the rock layers truly are at the micro level.
Yeah.
And just imagine that millions of times over. you know.
That's
so
wild.
Cool.
So what are some of the other hikes that you recommend to the clients that you have going to Zion?
Yeah, in Zion Canyon, I would say some really good ones to prioritize are the Watchman. I mentioned that kind of at the jump. That's a very pretty mountain that kind of, again, stands watch over the canyon, Watchman. That's a very pretty hike. It's moderate, probably about a 3-mile hike. You go up and have just wonderful views the whole way, plus at the top. Nice, easy, I shouldn't say easy, probably a shorter hike by Zion standards, because then there are longer hikes. The Emerald Pools Trail is a very, very unique one because you get access to some of the microclimates in Zion. We kind of teased that. I mean, there are because of the way that the sun plays off these canyon walls, there are parts of the canyon that don't get any direct sunlight at all, or maybe only a couple minutes during the day. And if you combine that with the water that's seeping through the porous sandstone and then like leaking out onto the canyon walls, you get these very, very pretty hanging gardens, you know, like mosses and ferns that are dripping, clinging to the walls. There are smaller versions of that on the Emerald Pools Trail that you can see. You can also see things like that on the Weeping Rock Trail that has a greater array of these hanging gardens, so to speak. And so those are just very, very unique things that you can't see in many other parks. So I would prioritize those trails. And I do think it's important to talk about trails outside the canyon as well. So if you can envision the Virgin River winding its way down this canyon, that part, the road that flows through, that goes through that part of the canyon, is off limits to personal vehicles. You need to ride the park shuttle to get off at any of the shuttle stops along that road. And most of the really good hiking, you know, launches off from that road. However, there's a part of the park off to the east that you can drive to. That's part of where the tunnel is that we drove through. I don't know if you remember that on the way to Bryce Canyon. Really pretty tunnel. There's a trail that I love to tell people about called the Zion Canyon Overlook Trail. You get a totally different view of this park from that overlook. It's only a mile. It's really neat. There's a lot of variety for just a 1 mile trail, and it puts you off at one of the top 3 views in the entire park. And you don't even have to try that hard to get it. So it's just on the east side. After you pass through the tunnel, that's where that hike starts. It's called the Zion Canyon Overlook Trail. So that's a really good one, I think, to prioritize as well. Yeah.
Awesome. And then I'll touch on another one that we did. It was called the Observation Point.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes. So this one, the hike itself was very anticlimactic. It was very, I was like, why are we hiking this? It's kind of boring.
Kind of unremarkable.
Like you don't see a lot. You're kind of coming in kind of a weird back way, kind of hiking through some like little tree forest, mountain, meadows, things like that. But then you get to the lookout, the observation point, and you're literally looking out over the canyon, and you see Angel's Landing, like the spine of Angel's Landing is like down in the valley. It was one of the coolest views that I have experienced in a national park. So the boring hike was definitely worth it for the view. And I also think too, isn't that where we saw the California condors?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the birds in that region, the California condor, they're these like giant, you probably know, you can give all the details about the birds, but there was a nest that we found out from a ranger later that there was a nest on one of the canyon walls, and I guess the mama bird was like flying around, and then we actually saw her go and land in the nest. It was so cool.
Unreal.
But tell us more about the California
to think about the story of the California condor, I that's why that was so cool. Otherwise, it just kind of looks like a big vulture. But then when you realize that they almost went extinct, I'm not going to get the year right, but it was back before we banned this chemical. I don't remember what it was called, but there were only maybe 12 or 17 California condors left in the wild, period. So we captured them all, bred them in captivity. It took a lot of hard work. And I mean, they were on the brink of extinction. Think about that. Like modern extinction is wild. But the rewilding of the California condor has been successful. They're in Zion, they're in the Grand Canyon now. They're in parts of California. So it's really cool to see them now back in the wild. And we got to see them in the sky. Yeah. That was that was pretty wild. I loved that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did too.
I'm glad you brought that up.
I don't have a lot, I'll say I don't have as much of appreciation for birding as you do. But it looked like a vulture to me, and I didn't think twice about it. But you're like, no, that's a California condor. And you're like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
So I was kind of trying to geek out with you, like, oh wow, that's awesome. But then you told me like they almost went extinct, and I was like, oh, like
They're pretty beloved by people who live out west. Yeah.
But I
It's
think
like a
that's
success
kind
story.
of the excitement and joy that you can see the national park systems, like they have homes for these animals and they're protected. And it's really cool.
It's a great point to make because if there were no Zion National Park with that environment, with the steep cliffs, with the soaring environments for that type of bird, if we hadn't protected that, it might be another version of Niagara Falls where there's just hotels and casinos and restaurants, and a California condor can't live there.
Right.
So I'm glad that it's protected and they get to survive. So that's cool.
Great.
All right.
Okay, so after talking about all the hikes and cool things to do, what other, like maybe we're not into hiking, like what other activities are there to do in Zion?
Yeah, for sure. We saw when we were staying in the town of Springdale, we saw a ton of bikes, right? E-bikes. There's a really great paved trail that goes up Zion Canyon Drive called the Terrace Trail. You can ride your bike on that. I mean, you can ride them in the road if you're safe. So that's a good option. Like biking that environment is pretty stellar, I would say. So there's that. I mean, what some of the scenic drives we did just to get about in the park by themselves, those scenic drives are worth the visit. You remember, I mean, they really are excellent. The ones you can take yourself. Sometimes you have to ride the shuttle, but then great. Then you can look the entire time. So,
and I think too, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the canyoneering aspect of Zion. So, canyoneering refers to more adventure type things. So, like you'll need equipment to do this.
Yeah.
So there's like rappelling and areas where you have to kind of scramble, and you're like kind of climbing between two rock walls on all fours, kind of. Like
it does sound
Spider-Man.
kind of fun. We didn't do it when we were there.
No, yeah.
But it's more technical, yes.
Yeah. So it is recommended to get a guide if you've never done it before. And it can be more strenuous. So if you're up for the adventure, that's definitely something that Zion is known for and would be really cool to check out.
Yeah. I totally agree. Maybe we'll do that next time we get out there.
I bet the boys would probably love that.
Yes, they would.
Our two boys.
Yes, they would. The last thing I want to mention about things to do, and then we'll kind of jump into the town of Springdale, because that's worth mentioning. Let's not forget about the visitor centers there. I thought those were so fascinating because there's two main ones in the canyon area. There's the main visitor center, which also has the gift shop, which those are always fun. But then there's the Human History Museum, which was closed when we were there, but it has since reopened. It was closed because of COVID. The Human History Museum is remarkable because the human history of Zion goes back like almost 12,000 years to where like hunter-gatherers were chasing wild game like mammoths, and camels into this canyon to kill them for their food. And then ever since then, it's been, the ancestral Pueblo people, and then Southwestern Paiutes, and then Mormons came in. So there's a lot of human history, a lot of stories to tell. And that museum does a really good job of doing that. I just wish it was open when we were there.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. I've definitely come to appreciate a lot of the visitor center, like museum exhibits. I remember the one in Grand Canyon, not to get off topic, but the one in Grand Canyon, they did a great job of, again, explaining the layers and the geology, and you're actually going to learn something in these visitor centers, and it's very cool.
It's protecting more than just the landscape. It is protecting the history, and if you don't tell the stories of the history of a place, you lose that history. So you have to keep reminding people of what this place means.
And why it's protected and how it came to be. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. All right. Anyway, visitor centers. I love them. All right. When's the best time to visit Zion?
You tell me.
I would say avoid July and August.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, it can get so hot. Luckily, we were not there in the dead of the summer, but it will get, daily high temperatures get into the triple digits in July and August, which is why Zion's peak season dips in those months, actually decreases. Every other park we've ever talked about, I feel like that's when it spikes, But no, not Zion. It just gets too darn hot. So generally speaking, starting at spring break and going all the way through November is a busy season, but the real busy months are like May and June, and then September and October. Probably the best times to be there, most comfortable times to be there.
Yeah, and a good reminder too, obviously this is kind of like a desert climate, so the air's really dry.
Yeah.
Definitely bring plenty of water. If you're leaving your lodging place, wherever that is, bring lots of water for the day because it does get hot and the air is really dry. So your throat's dry, your
You
skin
lose
gets
more water
dry.
than you think. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely lots of water. And then in the winter months too, I think it's interesting to note, obviously it will get cold and it does snow there.
Yeah. Beautiful when it snows.
It's still technically visitable in those months, but definitely take precautions. Obviously, like things, it can be slippery, it can be icy, it could be there's snow, like I said. And I do think back to your shuttle point earlier, I do think the shuttle stops in November.
Yeah.
For that certain portion of the road, so you can actually take your cars up there. But they do have some road closures too in the winter. So just
you're right. It's just a tricky visit in December, January, February. It's a little bit trickier to visit. But if you are really prioritizing seclusion, go in the winter. Why not? Right?
It would be beautiful in the winter too.
Yeah. I mean, imagine all those colors, draped in a little bit of dusting of white snow.
A little powdered sugar on top of that cake.
That's awesome. The other thing I wanted to mention was in July and August, if that's your only time to visit, great, do it. That is also though monsoon season when a lot of these like summer rainstorms can just dump deluges of rain at one time. Flash floods are a real issue there, especially when you are in a river hiking the Narrows, and it's raining. Or rain is in the forecast, you really got to be careful. They take it very seriously. If you ever have seen a video of a real flash flood, you can say the word flash flood. You see a video of it, it's unescapable. It's dangerous. I mean, it can sweep you away pretty darn quickly. So don't find yourself, 4 miles up a river with no escape. On a day where it's supposed to have a thunderstorm.
Yeah. So check the weather before you venture out and do.
The upside, though, about rainstorms are these, especially in the summer, are these things called ephemeral waterfalls. I had to look up what the word ephemeral meant, but it means extremely temporary, not lasting for a long time. So imagine like all the rain falling at the upper level on the mesa tops and on the cliffs, just pouring off the massive 1,000-foot tall cliffs in Zion, only lasting for 10 or 15 minutes. Apparently they're pretty remarkable. I've never seen them, but I think that would be kind of special. If you happen to be there, don't let the rain stop you. Get out to a safe place and view some of those waterfalls, I would say.
Yeah.
Plug. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because if you think about it, the water cannot get absorbed quickly into these like sandstone grounds. So it just goes where like path of least resistance. And then obviously that's why it's forming this giant canyon. But yeah. All right. So we only were there for 2 nights, but how long would you recommend some of your clients to stay in Zion? Yeah,
it felt like we could have stayed longer for sure, especially since we're hikers and we like to get out on the trail. I'd say 3 days is a great amount of time to be in Zion, especially if you're going to hit the trail and want to do some of those longer, more iconic hikes, like Angel's Landing, like the Narrows. Those are like half-day experiences, and by the time you're done, you're going to want to rest. So the days go quickly in Zion. So I would say 3 days is great. That allows you to mix in maybe Kolob Canyons, which is a more distant corner of the park. That would be perfect. But if you're not much into hiking and you just want to see some stellar views, you could do Zion in a day. I mean, really, with some of the scenic drives with hairpin turns, going through the Mount Carmel Zion Tunnel, pulling off at overlooks, stopping into the museums. Yeah, you could do it in a day for sure. Yeah, awesome. and why not? There's no reason not to, as long as you're there. Yeah.
So let's say we would stay for 3 days. Where do you recommend staying the night?
I feel like it is. There's only one choice. It's one of our favorite towns called Springdale, Utah. This is just one of the better park gateway town relationships in the national park system. Up there with Estes Park being close to Rocky Mountain National Park. Springdale, Utah it is adjacent to the entrance to Zion. It's right there. So imagine having the same scenery in Zion, just with a town with, boutique hotels and cute little shops and restaurants. It's right there. So that's where we stayed.
Yeah.
What were your impressions of Springdale?
I loved Springdale. It kind of felt authentic to the scenery that you're surrounded by. I feel like even the gas stations and like the Holiday Inn, we didn't stay at the Holiday Inn, but the Holiday Inn kind of was themed in a way that made it feel like parky and outdoorsy kind of. Like it had
Same
some
color.
like some wood entryways, and anyway, it was very authentic. I think they did a really good job, and that's probably what
like
they're
a zoning
known for.
thing. Yeah, I don't know.
I think too, on a map, if you're looking at the actual park lines of Zion, Springdale kind of is this little like inlet that is technically not part of the park, but the park literally surrounds the entire town except for the entryway coming in. So, I mean, they're a huge part of that park's ecosystem and sorry, not ecosystem, a big part of their economy.
Oh yeah.
So, we stayed in a little place called Under the Eaves. It was like a little bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. It was very cute. It was just the two of us, so we just had a little studio bedroom kind of thing. But we weren't there that much anyway. But the whole little town, I think just you can drive in and then you eventually get to the park gates. But along that drive, there's little restaurants and coffee shops. There was a market.
Yeah.
One thing to note, if you wanted to purchase alcohol, there are specific hours about purchasing alcohol. I remember that being a thing.
Oh, you're right.
Because we wanted to get a bottle of wine the night we got in, and they're like, "Oh, we don't sell wine." So anyway,
that's right.
I know that's not a national park thing, but that is a human
I
thing.
don't know.
Some people
wine
about.
during sunsets, kind of an awesome combo.
Yes,
we would recommend.
Yeah, so look up the store hours.
Yeah,
alcohol sales. Anyway,
yeah, we flew into Vegas, which I think is definitely the easiest airport to use. Most big cities have direct flights to Vegas. There's also a little town called St. George, Utah, which is 2 hours closer to Zion. So, but I don't feel like there's very many direct flights into there. But if that you can patronize a smaller airport if you want to do that, that's always nice. But usually it's best, I think, to rent a car when visiting Zion. You may not use it some days because of the shuttle system. That is, you are not allowed. You are prohibited from driving your own car, like I said, up Zion Canyon Scenic Drive. So what we ended up doing was leaving our car at our hotel in Springdale. The town of Springdale also has a shuttle system that takes you into Zion. That's then where you catch the Zion shuttle into the park that way. And it's really well done. I mean, there were lines. We were there in October. We were there in a busy month. There were lines in the middle of the day. Oh, is it September?
Yeah.
Late September. Okay.
I heard you said that.
So. And I just think that it's so important to understand that shuttle system, because if you get there and you're expecting the same freedom that you might expect in Yellowstone, where you live in your car in that park, it's very different, and you may be unhappy. So it's important to just understand where you're allowed to drive your own car in Zion. So the shuttles are great. I thought they worked out really well. Kind of forces you to slow down, rest, wait for the bus. It's not a big deal. You get to look up at the canyon around you, but.
And also, it kind of forces you to plan your day so that you need to bring food or snacks or extra water or lunch or medications, whatever the case is that you need, because you don't really have your car with all your stuff to drive around.
That's a great point. Yeah, you really should have a lot of this stuff with you. Water, extra food. Yeah. Yeah. So we mentioned that town of Springdale, which we love and adore. We'll be back. That's near the south entrance of the park. They may probably refer to it as the main entrance, but there's other entrances too. What's the one that we drove out on the way to Bryce? The east entrance?
Yes. Yeah.
That also gets a fair amount of traffic. Going through that tunnel, that's a super pretty drive, climbing out of Zion Canyon to the east, passing through that man-made tunnel, and out the east entrance. That can get a little backed up with people coming from other gateway towns that are more distant. But then there's really only other two entrances, I believe, ways to get into the park. Kolob Canyons is one of them, but that doesn't pass you through the park. It's
like an in and out up in the top, like northwest corner of the park, but you'd have to go back down and around to get into the main entrance.
Yeah.
We have a map in our guidebooks that you can check out that shows you exactly what we're talking about here.
For sure. Yeah, check out the guidebook. And then there's the fourth one is Kolob Terrace Road. That is a little bit trickier. There's not really an entrance station there. It is merely a way to access the upper reaches of Zion. The higher elevations. There are some pretty overlooks up there off of Kolob Terrace Road. And there are a few trailheads for much longer day hikes. I mean, 10 plus miles, activities like that. And that just kind of weaves you into some more rural areas that are outside the park borders as well, but not so much an entrance, but a means to access the park. So, yeah.
Great. So as we're wrapping up here, what would be some expert tips that makes visiting Zion excellent?
Yes. So I think we have said this about every park, but I'm going to say it again. Be comfortable exploring the park early in the morning or after dinner, if, in the late afternoon, early evening. Those hours of the day are when a lot of people just aren't comfortable getting their day going yet or continuing their recreation. Get up early because, number one, it's not going to be as hot. That's nice. Number two, a lot of people aren't out of bed yet, so it's a lot less crowded. And number three, you get to see the park wake up and come to life. It is, I swear, it's the best time of day to be out in a national park because so many animals are still moving around. They're starting to forage. The sun in Zion, oh my gosh, the sun casting its rays on these canyon walls and lighting up those colors is so pretty in the morning. And then in the evening, same thing. People call it quits for the day. They're wiped out. They're out of energy. They want to go have dinner. If you have figured out a way to stay energized, get back out into the park at that point because same thing. A lot of the colors are delightful. The temperatures are more agreeable. So that's all. I swear that's just the number one tip, and it always will be because of crowd control, is enjoy the park early and late. Yeah. The middle of the day, obviously still great, but for different reasons. So that's the biggest thing. And you mentioned earlier, so what we like to always say, have your stuff with you.
Yeah.
Bring what you need. That's
Bring what
another
you
big
need.
tip.
Yep. I think another very important tip about Zion in particular, and we mentioned this, is the shuttle system. So having a plan for the day, and knowing how you're going to get from point A to point B to C or wherever. They have shuttle maps.
Yeah.
I think they mark it on the brochures that they hand you when you get to the park. But there's shuttle stops along there that you can kind of plan out. But I definitely think the logistics in a different way than Yellowstone. Yellowstone was planning logistics on like where you're planning to drive and how long it's going to take. But Zion is like knowing the different shuttle stops and what area you need to head to get off to do the hikes and things.
It's a great point. It's almost like kind of like navigating a city, using public transit,
right, Right.
But yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, because if you don't understand, if you can't comprehend you won't see the Narrows, you won't see the Grotto, you won't see Emerald Pools unless you understand how to use the shuttle system. Mm-hmm. You gotta comprehend that. Everyone has to do it. Everyone's playing by the same rules.
Yeah.
Unless you stay in Zion Lodge, by the way, I don't know, that's a little note. If you're staying in Zion Lodge, which is inside the canyon, inside the gates, up Zion Canyon Scenic Drive, you are exempt from needing to take the shuttle. You can drive your own car up to the lodge where you're staying. The rooms are pretty rustic. They're nothing fancy, but very beautiful setting, and it gets you closer to the action. That is the one exception to having to use the shuttle system.
Expert tip.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say that that's probably important. Yeah.
Great. Is there anything that you would say you should avoid doing when planning a trip to Zion?
Avoid. I would normally say, what we always like to say is avoid peak season, unless you don't have a choice. But in Zion, the peak season is just so long. It's March through November. It's almost the entire year. So there's really no avoiding it. I would say just don't try to pack in too much to your visit, because if you do that, that naturally creates this sense of you're underperforming. You didn't get to everything you wanted. Instead, have a couple big things you want to do and prioritize them. Jump in with both feet. Be prepared, because then those experiences are going to be that much more special to you. It's always that quality over quantity argument. And in Zion, that's very true, because a lot of the hiking trails can be a little bit more moderate than you might expect. You might be a little more tired after you're done. So having this vision in your head of needing to check off all these things, if the circumstances don't allow for that, you don't want to feel like you came up short on your expectations. So I think just go in with realistic expectations about what you want to get out of this park. But just stay patient. Don't try to do too much. That's the biggest thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great tip.
And don't forget your Angel's Landing permit if you want to do it.
Yes. So plan ahead for that. Angel's Landing I think there's another one that requires a permit, or is it Subway?
Oh, it's the Subway.
Yeah. So I think that one requires a permit just because it's a little bit more difficult and technical. And I think,
it's a wilderness
need a guide.
Yeah. It's considered like a wilderness activity. So you need a wilderness permit. But yeah, they actually don't permit guides on that hike. You need the route finding experience and the canyoneering wherewithal to do that on your own. Like you can go with buddies, but they don't hire services or guides to take you on that hike. It's a little bit intimidating doing the Subway.
Some people are into that.
Totally.
And that's okay.
Totally. Yeah. But yeah, that's the Subway, Angel's Landing. You got to get your permits to visit those places. My other tip is get a guidebook. We summarize this all for you in a very easy to understand, concise guidebook. So I would say do that. Zion was remarkable. We're going to be back at some point.
For sure. Definitely.
All right. Any other closing thoughts about this park?
I do think, I know we mentioned we kind of did it with a road trip with a couple other parks. What other, like if you had recommendations on...
That's a great call out.
Like what other ways to tie it in? What would those be?
I think Bryce Canyon is an awesome complement to Zion. It's only 2 hours away, which that might sound like a lot for a daily commute. That's nothing for two of the America's best national parks. Those are essentially side by side. Come on. I would say do Bryce Canyon as well, because it's a much smaller park. You can do that in a day. You might even not even need to stay overnight near Bryce. But that has some truly remarkable hikes of its own, which we've talked about on our episode about our top 7 hikes.
Yep.
Definitely do Bryce Canyon. And then we mentioned the Grand Canyon as well. If you want to drive from Zion all the way to the south rim of the Grand Canyon, that can take a lot more time. But if you want to just get to the north rim, that's only 2.5, 3 hours away from Zion. But with the wildfire they just had, that might be a little bit tricky until we really understand the reopening measures that they want to handle, how they want to handle that massive wildfire they had. But yeah, those are 3 awesome parks that are all nested in the Colorado Plateau. You'll really get the geology of the area if you understand the rock layers of those 3 parks. So let's say do that. Yeah.
Great.
Let's
go back to Zion.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, hey, thank you for joining us on our fourth episode of Parks Made Possible. Drop a comment about another park you want to hear more about. Maybe it's Glacier, maybe it's Yosemite. Who knows? We would love to satisfy those requests. So if you haven't already, please please subscribe. We're very, very happy with how this is going. So we want to keep bringing you good content. So until next time, thanks for joining.